Good afternoon. Welcome to part 3 of the Self-Esteem Workshop. My name is Berak Hussain, registered psychotherapist, international student counselor at the Health and Counseling Services at Carleton University's Health and Counseling Services and the International Student Services Office. The last 3 parts of our series, we first took a look at what is self-esteem, how it impacts our wellness, and looking at our core worth. In the second session, we took a look at love and how love from others, and especially from ourselves, can help heal the inner child that was hurt, and looking at how to build that love in order to be able to get to the third part of our series today, which is on growth, the active side of love. So let's get started. For those of you who are watching on YouTube as well as Facebook, welcome. This is an interactive discussion, so I'll be asking questions and there'll be some exercises and activities for you, so please feel free to join in. I will now put up the slides where we can join along and watch as we get into our final part of our series today. So let's begin. And it didn't work. Let's try that again. Trying to put up the PowerPoint. It's not allowing me for some reason. I'm not sure why. So just give me a moment while I sort this out. In the meantime, what I'll do is I'll put on some sound. So you can listen to this while I figure out why the screen is not sharing this. I think there's something blocking it, which is strange because we've had it for the last few sessions, so that's okay. We'll just quickly give it access now, and then we should be good to go. I think we should be good to go now. Let's try it again. No, it's still not allowing me to do that. Okay. I'm not sure what's going on. Let's try that again. I want to be able to follow along with our slides, so I want to make sure that it's available. I'm not sure why it's not allowing me to show the PowerPoint screen since we have put them up last time. I'm going to try one last time, and if not, then it's just going to be me talking, and I'll share other things as we go along here. I'm not sure why it's not allowing it. The security of the system preferences seem to have blocked showing it, but there's always ways around this. Just going to be patient. At least we have this nice relaxing music in the background while we sort this out. For some reason, my computer's decided to block screen sharing of my PowerPoint slides. I'm not sure why. Those of you who are watching, have you come across this issue before, where your computer has blocked screen sharing? What's funny is I have it right here. Let me try another thing here. I'm doing another thing here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to upload the files on to this program instead of sharing the screen, and then we can hopefully get it from there. It's uploading, so it should be good to go. I'm going to make sure we have the slides here so you can follow along with the content, and I'll have to figure out later why my computer is not sharing the PowerPoint this time, because we've not had any issues with that before. The program is just uploading right now the slides. So while that's happening, those of you who've been watching the series, what are some things that have been of interest for you so far when watching all of these different concepts of self-esteem, and where do you stand with that? While I get this up on the screen here. There we go. All right. So let's jump. You can still answer the question while I get to our part today. It's not going to be perfect. As you can see, it's broken up a little bit, but that's all right. At least we got our PowerPoints up there without showing the screen. All right. Just want to make sure. Can you hear me? Can you hear me clearly? We just, those who are watching, if you can just give me a yes or no. If you can hear it clearly, that would be great. The voice is good. All right, so let's get to our slides today. All right, so when we take a look at growth, and again, for those who are watching, we are using the Self-Esteem Workbook by Dr. Glenn Sheraldi. So you can get your hands on this book. It'd be great for you to use as we finish up this series, but great for you to have so you can continue on in this journey of growth. So when we take a look at growth, it is essentially the active side of love. And what that means essentially is taking a look at love in action, right? And what that means, like we said, that self-esteem is, I'm just gonna make sure everything's good here. Yeah. So self-esteem, like we said, is the matter of the heart as it is of cognition. And so this is especially true for the third building block of our diagram. If you recall, the first one was the worth, and the second one is love, and our third one is the growth, right? Where we balance on top the self-esteem. So in other words, other names for growing could include love in action, completing, coming to flower, and the even more factor. So that's what that part of self-esteem could mean for us, right? And we'll continue on with that. So the even more factor here, when we take a look at it, it takes a look at deriving from that somebody loves you even more, even though you can look a certain way, you can behave a certain way, but because that love is there for you, you feel even more, let's say, beautiful, even more intellectual, even more whatever it is, because of the worth and value that you have in somebody that you care about has given you that, right? That your face lights up when you remember something that somebody tells you, so on and so forth. So in other words, growth is that calm feeling of being even more of what you are at the core. So in other words, growing is developing the traits that you are being the best person that you can indeed be. I'm going to lower the sound a little bit as we don't want to get too distracted, although it sounds really lovely, but we'll add the sound a little bit more later. So if you remember that all the traits that exist in that embryo, so you become even more. So you feel deeply and quietly glad to be who you are, because you know that you are being the best person that you can be at the reasonable and steady pace that is uniquely suited for you. So in other words, as we see here, growth means developing our capacities and personalities. It is ascending, moving towards that excellence and elevating humanity, both in the others and yourself. So we've likened the core, like we said, to that crystal of infinite, unchanging worth with every needed attitude and attribute in the embryo. So the first factor we looked at was the worth, right? We acutely see this value. Factor 2, love, strengthens and shines the core and provides the foundation for our third factor of growth, right? And so here, what we want to take a look at is when we look at growing or completing, this involves scrubbing off remaining dirt and lifting the core into the light where it may shine even more and more brightly for you, right? So when we take a look at this growing side of love, it's the next steps for ourselves, right? The next steps in love in action. So we want to choose behaviors that are loving and self-promoting, and we want to remove from around the core behaviors that are not loving because they are not self-promoting, right? So this includes any practices that are unhealthy or unkind, including drug use, excessive anger, sexual behavior that objectifies you. So unloving behavior that also includes sleeping too little, not eating healthy foods, right? Or inhaling too much nicotine. This is not good for the self, even though people engage in these behaviors, right? So personal growth is one of life's greatest pleasure. To repeat, self-esteem does not mean complacency. So what does that mean? So for example, the misleading idea that self-acceptance is the end of therapeutic or personal development rather than the beginning. So counseling or the therapeutic process can in this way become less concerned with assisting people towards change and more concerned with simply helping them be more comfortable. So that might be an adequate approach for helping someone come to terms with having, let's say, a terminal illness, but it is unlikely to succeed as well in aiding the process of that personal growth and development. We take a look at here Dennis the Menace. So we see here this beautiful diagram of what he says about himself. So self-esteem is this realistic and appreciative opinion of yourself, right? Rests on the combination of factors 1, of worth and love, and 2, and coming to flower, factor 3, right? So again, these 2 main points here are really good to be aware of for ourselves when it comes to the love in action for the next steps. So we go a little bit further on here. Again, sorry with the slides here. At least we got them on the screen. We had a bit of trouble earlier trying to get them up on the screen. So we take a look at perspectives on growing. Oh, they look really tiny here. So you can see here, it's hard for me to see from here. I have it on another screen here in front of me. So we'll do that as well. So in terms of these perspectives, I think I'm going to skip the slide as well. I think it deleted a slide. That's the issue here. Don't you love when you come prepared and then all of a sudden it doesn't look like you're prepared? So you just give me a moment here. I am going to put up here. That's okay. We'll just continue with that, and I will just speak out loud since it's not showing the slides here that we wanted. So I do have the slides that I am reading, but I don't know why it's not showing the same slides. You know, the last 2 sessions went really smoothly. Strangely enough, now, unfortunately, we're not, it's not showing what I wanted to show today. But let me see if I can put up the slides again. So I'm just uploading the slides that showing what I have here in front of me that is not showing up on the screen. Just give it a moment while it loads. So these are really nice concepts if you think about it. The consciously choosing behaviors that are loving and self-promoting for yourself and trying to remove core behaviors that can really harm that self, right? And unhealthy, unkind practices that we, let's say, have gotten used to because we think that's normal, that's okay. So once we continue understanding that, it's really important to have that awareness of that self-compassion, just like you would teach a child, just like you would help a friend who's struggling. We want to be able to do the same thing for ourselves, right? Okay, so I've removed the other slides that didn't have everything that I wanted to share here. I hope this one has the same of what I wanted to share or not. I'm not sure. No, it's the same one. That's all right. I don't know why this slide is not showing, but that's all right. We'll just go through it together anyhow. So what I want to take a look at now is looking at perspectives of growing. And so we have that here as one of our first part. We're going to take a look at different aspects. So there's the basics of growing. There is acceptance that you are not perfect, taking stock of your character. Okay. There's the experience of pleasure, and then preparing for setbacks. So we're going to go through each one of these in a little bit more detail, so to help us grow on growing a little bit more. So the first one, perspectives on growing. So let's take a look at some questions that are relevant here in terms of that self-regard for ourselves, right? So in this activity, we want to look at these 10 principles, and I'm going to read them out loud and I want you to reflect with these questions afterwards. So we are designed and created to develop physically, mentally, socially, emotionally, and spiritually. And we will do so when our capacities are nourished and exercised. This nourishment, of course, is love. Number 2, developing our capacities is a way of loving ourselves. Sharing them is a way of loving others. Growing is an outgrowth of unconditional worth and unconditional love, not a condition for these. So that's an interesting one, which is why we have it as a triangle on top of these building blocks. Love provides the soil for growth. In the absence of a sense of unconditional worth and love, success, performance, producing rarely lead to that self-esteem. Therefore, the decision to develop is best preceded by worth and love. Growing does not mean a higher degree of competence, since the research indicates that competence does not predict global self-esteem. Competence, as it is usually used, implies an outcome. So accomplished, finished, or perfected. Rather, growing is a perception that says, I can, I am capable and have the ability. I am on track and moving in a desired direction. So growing is a direction and a process, not an outcome. Thus, one can feel good about progress even if one fails short of a desired goal. Number 5, developing our capacities does not change, increase, or prove worth. Worth exists at birth, and it is already infinite and unchanging. Rather, as we grow, we express our worth, we change our perceptions of self, we experience ourselves with more joy, appreciation, and satisfaction. We see our true core selves more clearly, and we put ourselves in the sunlight where that core can shine more brightly. Number 6, over time, good experiences with friends solidify our trust and favorable opinions with that friend. Similarly, good experiences will self-fix and enhance that self-appreciation. Number 7, growing is an ongoing process. Unlike the rose, which blooms and then dies, the core self can continue to grow even as that outer shell ages. Number 8, growth is not completed in isolation, but it is accomplished independently, so with the help of others, nature, or grace. Number 9, growing consists simply of cultivating integrity, so moral conduct and character, and wholesome pleasure, so pleasures that recreates without compromising conscience, including art, beauty, hobbies, learning, developing talent, serving, cleaning, and beautifying our surroundings, playing, working, and loving. And finally, number 10, people choose to develop in order that they can be happier. So as we are happier, we tend to enjoy life and ourselves more often, right? So some questions to think about when it comes to growth is, are integrity and pleasure somehow incompatible? So this is an interesting question because integrity implies that integration is, or wholeness, right? So it implies that there's no division between one's behavior and one's values. So when we develop integrity, we experience ourselves with more peace, and we can say that all is lovely outside my house and inside my house and myself. So meaning here, the moral behavior, it becomes you, and it is kind, peaceable, and honest. And integrity is developed by starting the day with that decision of, today I will put integrity first. So although Some have argued that pleasure is somehow incompatible with integrity. Recall the canonized Catholic saint, Francis of Assisi, who said, "No man can live without delight." And this is why a man deprived of joy in spirit, so the joie de vivre, as they say, goes over into carnal pleasures. So Gandhi further explained this, that it's not pleasure that corrupts the consciousness, but pleasure without conscience. So pleasures that exploit, abuse, or violate trust. So wholesome pleasure is recreative and it's necessary for humans, right? Only the pleasures that degrade the human consciousness are to be avoided. So in this sense, the pursuit of wholesome pleasure is consistent with the pursuit of integrity. So another question that comes to mind here is, to have self-esteem, must I perfect integrity? So inner peace requires that one is doing the best that one knows how, and one can do no more than one knows how or is capable of. So since everyone is fallible, each person falls short of perfection. However, we can still experience our worth if we try our absolute best to be on our course and to be moving in the desired direction. The third question here to reflect on is, when is growing not fun, right? So growing is not fun when the outcome becomes a dire necessity. If, for example, one must develop into a successful salesperson as a condition of worth or happiness, then one will likely feel driven, not necessarily joyful, right? Again, we return to the fact that wholesome growing assumes that unconditional worth and love are first in place, so that one can enjoy the process of growing without fear or failure or preoccupation with the outcome. So outcome preoccupation and fear of failure both derive from the same roots, conditional worth and conditional love. So growing is climbing that staircase, that process, not arriving, right? Thus, you can enjoy the process and that progress and that direction without frustration for failing to arrive at perfection. So these are really great concepts to reflect upon. If we go a little bit further in terms of reflections on elevating humanity and the self, I'm going to add a little bit more sound here to this because I always find it empowering when we have this kind of relaxation sounds along with these types of reflections. So once you have a self, you're secure in your own worth, then it is easier to lose yourself in selfless service. If I am not for myself, who will it be for? Sorry, who will be for me? But if I am only for myself, what am I? Another really nice quote by William James is, "The great use of life is to spend it for something that will outlast it." So not necessarily thinking of just this material world, but that's what your beliefs are, but the next. Albert Einstein says, "One knows from daily life that one exists for others. 100 times each day, I remind myself." George Burns says, "If all else fails, try doing something nice for someone who doesn't expect it. You'll be surprised how good you will feel, not just the other person." Another really nice one here is by Laura Bennett. "We are all craftsmen, investing our talents." Dallin Oak says, "Service is an eye towards others' lasting development." And another anonymous quotation, "Some say principles are constraining. I say they are liberating. Some say service is subservience. But I say it's ennobling." So these are great quotations looking at reflections on elevating our humanity and the self. So the next part we're going to take a look at here is looking at how to, there we go, looking at strategies for growth. And the first one we're going to take a look at is acceptance that we are not perfect. So join me in for that one. And the other ones we're going to take a look at is taking stock of our character, experiencing pleasure, and setbacks. So we just finished that first one, and now we're going to jump into this one, accepting that we are not perfect. So with this one here, we know that growing, like we said, is climbing that mountain. Okay, so not just getting to the destination, but the process of it. So if you know you have a firm footing, then you can push up with confidence and it can be fun. So worth and love are the firm footings of that growth. as you set out to grow and enjoy the process. Some people might, rain on your parade. You've heard that expression before, but reminding you in a way or another that you and your efforts are less than perfect. So this activity again here, the nevertheless, and we've seen it in love and we've seen it in worth. It varies slightly from the other two, but it's also very powerful. So for example, even though I am not perfect, nevertheless, we can add something like I am growing. So someone tells you that, well, you can't do anything right. And you think, well, even though I'm not perfect, I'm still learning, I'm still growing, I'm still trying, right? So these are great ways of replacing that. Other statements you could say, such as I'm on the course and moving along. I'm still enjoying the trying process. I'm doing something about it. I still work, I'm having fun, I'm developing in other ways. Learning is still an adventure. I am more today than I was yesterday. I still persist and get it done. I'm still new at this and finding my way. There's a learning curve. So can you have others think of other statements like that? So you see here, this is something that you can do when you are told that you are not perfect, or even when you have that thought to yourself, because we sometimes tend to be our harshest critics, right? So even though you can practice this with a partner or yourself, we look at I'm not perfect. We can continue along the lines of this thoughts with, for example, with this example. So my frog has a quicker wit than you do. Now, that's almost like an insulting statement here for ourselves, right? And in this statement here, we want to take a look at, restating that. Okay, my frog may be quicker than me, but I'm still learning the skill. So again, replacing him. Another statement somebody could throw at you, you've lost, your memory is really lousy. You don't even remember. So again, you could replace that with saying statements as, okay, so I may not remember this, but I am trying. I'm not here to intentionally hurt somebody, right? So this is a great practice to have, and it could be something that can be really useful and helpful to practice along always when you are met with people who are just being really negative, that you can reframe it and use this nevertheless statement, right? And learning how to accept your imperfections. That's the second one. So over the next few days, what I'd like you to do is select 3 events with the potential that can really impact your self-esteem. And in response to each of these events, select an even though I'm not perfect statement, and then describe below, and I'll show you here in the chart, a situation, right? The statement used and the emotional effect you experience from selecting the statement and saying it to yourself. So you could just have something put along like this chart here, where just write these statements along like that. And then as you do that, you can then, oh, already went on to the next one here. You can work on, how to accept your imperfections that way by just practicing this daily for the next few days. So this can be a really excellent exercise, like we were saying, on how to kind of work on when you are being put down negatively by people who are not empowering, and they're saying, you are not perfect, and just raining on your parade, as they say. You can use the statement of even though, nevertheless. Now, the next part we're going to take a look at is taking a look at here. There we go. Next one. Accepting that you're not perfect. We already done that. Go backwards. This is not my day with their slides today. All right. So we've done that. Let's taking a look at this strategy here, where we're taking a look at assessing 8 areas for a living, taking stock of our character. There's so many other strategies in the book here, but I've selected a few big ones that I think we can really work on. All right, so taking stock of our character. Okay, so the 8 areas of living. So before we jump into that, let's have a little bit of understanding of this. So self-esteem is not positive thinking, where you tell yourself how wonderful and perfect you are, hoping that you will therefore become so. So the kind of thinking is emotionally immature and stressful because it is not grounded in reality. So people with self-esteem have no need to inflate themselves. Rather, they are secure enough to accurately appraise both their strengths and the things that they need to work on. So growth begins with an honest recognition of one's present level of development. The process can be quite self-affirming and optimistic when done with that genuine regard for your core self. So this activity here is based on the moral inventory used in Alcoholics Anonymous. So each member of that group, they teach that when a grocer inventories the shelf, for example, he just counts what's there and what isn't. So he does not judge. He just counts. So when we inventory our own selves, we simply count without judging our core self, right? So this activity here is the loving, fearless, and searching, honest moral inventory, a big name. So it is loving because love casts out fear. With love and without fear, we simply acknowledge where we are presently standing. And so fear results when a person negatively judges that core self. So what would be more frightening than concluding that one is bad to the core? The label bad is irrational because it implies that one is totally and always bad. The more realistic view is that one is infinitely worthwhile at the core, but possesses some rough edges, which I think is a realistic account from all of us, right? So this inventory is honest and it's moral because we honestly search and identify both strengths and weaknesses. If only we found weaknesses, so it would be called an immoral inventory. So we consider something to be moral if it is in the long-term best interest for humankind. Immoral, obviously, if it's not. So the inventory will follow a basic mid pattern, and we're going to break it through what you see here on the screen. So behavior, affects, sensations, imagery, cognitions, moral, interpersonal, and drugs in our biology, as well as looking at how this was adapted from psychologist Arnold Lazora's multi-model approach to helping. So this approach assumes that people have strengths and weaknesses in 8 dimensions of their lives, and each dimension being represented by the letter, like we see of their acronym here. And so seeing strengths and weaknesses side by side help puts our weaknesses into perspective. Again, that counting, right? So this we see weak areas as the rough edges that can be strengthened and developed rather than making us feel bad about ourselves. So they are not representative of the whole core, and they relate of each dimensions are helping us looking at growth and development. So remember that acknowledging present reality can also clarify your directions and your goals. So let's take a look closer here at the list of moral strengths. So I'm going to read out a number of qualities that could be considered moral strengths because they contribute to the best interests of humankind, including ourselves. So number 1, in this step, what we want to do is we want to check all the qualities if you have to a reasonable degree. And then we're going to circle an item if developing it more fully would further your growth and your development. So keep these in mind, or you can jot them down if you like. And then we'll use the basic here, basic mid, what you see here in the acronym, in terms of how to strengthen our weaknesses. So I'm going to go through them, tick them off, or just try to remember them. So integrity, compassion, love, virtue, knowledge, patience, kindness, humility, respect for others, respect for the self, honesty, helpfulness, supportiveness, affection, consideration, thoughtfulness, tolerance for diversity, trust, moral cleanliness, a sense of duty and responsibility, care for your reputation, forgiveness, friendliness, appropriate sorrow, hope, optimism, thriftiness, and selfless service. There's also sharing, gentleness, civility, courtesy, thankfulness, appreciation, dependability, and keeping to your word. So the next part here is circle an item if developing it more further would help you in your growth or your happiness. So now let's take a look at assessing these different areas here, right? I'm going to describe each of these areas. So we can take a look at basically on that, I said basic here, referring to the basic mid-checkup and the planning sheet. You're going to assess your life in the following 8 areas. So keep in mind that you're looking for general patterns. And of course, all of us at times will experience many of those weaknesses that we have an opportunity to work and grow on. So number 1, in terms of behavior. So this is the things that we do. So gestures, reactions, expressions, measured speech or defeated posture, yelling, compulsive behaviors, all of these things. Number 2, affect. So this refers to the feelings you experience. So strengths could include optimism, peace, appreciation of the self, contentment with what you have, cheerfulness, worry, guilt, fear, depression, chronic depression. Number 3, sensations. So this takes a look at referring to the 5 senses. So strengths might include enjoying the wind, taste, smells, sounds, and sights. Problem symptoms might be chronic headaches, tension, nausea, dizziness, and only seeing negatives in the environment. These are probably things that we can work on, right? Imagery, number 3. So strengths might be visualizing a pleasant future vacation, having pleasant dreams, or experiencing a pleasant feeling upon seeing one's reflection. Perhaps taking a look at negatives could include nightmares, seeing oneself as failing, unattractive, faulty self-image, or focusing only on the negatives we see in the mirror. Number 5, cognitions. So problems are indicated by the presence of our distortions. So strengths are indicated by realistic optimism. So everything won't be perfect, but I'll find something to enjoy, to grow from, or improve. Or cognitive skills, such as nevertheless skills, right? So remember that we've used that before. Or cognitive rehearsal, which we did earlier in a different section. Number 6, moral. So this refers to one's character and conduct, and strengths can include any of the qualities that we just spoke about. And weaknesses could be the opposite of them. Number 7, interpersonal describes the quality of our relationships. So strengths could include good quality of intimate relationships, making family and friends a high priority, affiliating with people other than those you work with, and so on and so forth. Negative symptoms might include the absence of friends, so aggression, name-calling, violence, sarcasm, consistently withdrawing from people who disappoint you rather than facing and trying to strengthen that relationship. And also non-assertiveness, allowing oneself to be used, so setting boundaries. Number 8, drugs are biology. So this refers to the present health habits that we have, habits that can reflect self-regard and are therefore strengths, so which could include adequate rest, relaxation, regular exercise, proper nutrition. Junk food, on the other hand, chronic use of tranquilizers or sleeping pills, smoking, drug, alcohol, these generally affect and reflect a disregard for one's health. So when we take a look at furthering this, right? So the loving, fearless, searching, and honest moral inventory. So I know it's a lot to go through in terms of information, but under each of the 8 that we took a look at here, okay, we're going to list our present strengths or what is presently going well in our lives. The second thing you're going to do is, what are the present problem areas in your life that you notice that dissatisfies you? So we're going to describe that. So if you look here, I'm going to show you a chart here where you can just jot down some of these titles. Make sure they can show here. So just jot these down, and then you can go through them. So just jot these down in category-wise. So in the categories, you want to show the behavior, the affect, sensations, imagery, cognition, the moral, interpersonal, and the drugs, biology. So first you're going to do your present strengths, and then the next part you're going to talk about present weaknesses. So some of the things that we've already mentioned that you can work on. And then you're going to ask the questions, how would my life be different if I developed my weaker areas? And finally, what I could do to change or grow. So this is taking inventory realistically of yourself, of each of these areas of how to improve and how to grow, just like that person who's stocking the shelves in the grocery store. Okay? And we do know and we acknowledge that growth does not happen overnight. So some might feel disappointed when it doesn't work, when they don't see a change. So returning to this and working with this over and over again and really being honest with yourself and working on these can go a long way in really helping you create this portrait, right? And be realistic. And it's an ongoing process, not an overnight thing, like we said. So now that we've done this, let's go on to the next part where we are taking, so here's the chart. So just like we said, so you're going to write down some of the areas, as you can see here, of the strengths, okay? And what are the things that you can work on and how you feel if you actually worked on them. So I'll give you a few minutes to reflect on that and to see how within yourselves you can actually truly work on those things. So I'll just give you a few moments to look at that chart and see how you can fill it out for yourselves. All right, so hopefully you've taken a good inventory of yourself in terms of strengths, things that you can work on, and how you would look at yourself if you were to work on them, and how that would change your life if you were to honestly work on those characteristics that you have without that judgment, because I think it's the judgment that really makes you look at yourself in such a negative way. Let's go on to the next part here, looking at how to experience pleasure. So between 1970 and 1990, the average American work year increased by more than 160 hours, and leisure time dropped in corresponding fashion, despite improvements in our technology. So people tend to give up activities that give them pleasure when they're short of time. This is what our research shows here. So as a result of stress and the absence of pleasure, their mood slips. And the more depressed people become, the more their self-esteem erodes, and the less likely they are to believe that formerly enjoyable activities will bring them pleasure. So they will fail to engage in the satisfying activities that would lift their mood and rebuild their self-esteem. So in the absence of leisure time, it becomes more difficult to define ourselves apart from, let's say, a job or a paycheck. Harvard economist Julia Schor reported that when workers at a British factory were forced to give up overtime because of hard times, a physical and emotional recuperation took place. And so with time on their hands, including weekends and holidays, friendships developed. And in the meantime, and the meaning rather of life became more clearer for them. So the idea of money lost some of its intensity. Even those with families to look after preferred the new arrangement with very few exceptions. So let's take a little further on this and advance the proposition that finding pleasure in life is a skill that adults need to learn and need to introduce and reinforce. So the skill maintains emotional balance and improves self-esteem by helping us experience ourselves in a variety of pleasant ways. So there's no suggestion here that one cannot or should not find pleasure in work, only that in the present culture, there's a tendency for work and too narrowly defined on an individual. So this activity that we're going to do right now will help you discover or rediscover what is pleasant for you and make a plan to do some of these things. Okay, so you got to promise to yourself that you're going to see how you can apply some of these. So what we're going to do, okay, and already my slides went on to the next one. So let's go back here. Experiencing our pleasure. So first thing you're going to do is actually schedule pleasant activities. Okay. And so this is an activity that was developed by Peter Lewitson and his colleagues in 1986. And so the pleasant events schedule is about a wide range of activities where we want to check off the things that we enjoyed in the past, and we're going to rate them from 1 to 10. And each of the score reflects, like 1 will reflect little pleasure and 10 reflects great pleasure. So this rating goes, we're going to do column 1 and column 2, and beside each of the things that I'm going to read out loud. So for example, if you moderately enjoyed being happy with people, but didn't enjoy being with friends and relatives, your first 2 columns would look like a check mark, but then a 5. Like you enjoyed it, but it was 5 out of 10. So let's get started. So in order to do a pleasant event schedule, just do column 1, column 2. You could do it mentally or you could write it down. And so these are events that occur with other people, and they either make us feel accepted, appreciated, liked, understood, and you might feel that an activity belongs in one group or another. So the grouping is not important. So let's get started. Being happy with people. So is this something that you like? If yes, check it off and then rate it out of 10. And we'll continue on with the list. Then being with friends, relatives, thinking about people I like. Number 4, planning an activity with people I care about. Meeting somebody new of the same gender, meeting somebody new, the opposite gender, going to a restaurant, meeting with people, being at celebrations, so birthdays, weddings, baptisms, parties, family get-togethers, etc., etc. Meeting a friend for a lunch or a drink. Number 10, talking openly and honestly, for examples about your hopes, your fears, what interests you, what makes you laugh, what makes you sad. Number 11, experiencing true affection, verbal or physical. Showing interest in others. Number 13, noticing success and strengths in family and friends. Number 14, dating, courting, right? Getting to know somebody. Even if you're married or have somebody, still engaging in that behavior with a partner. Number 15, having a lively conversation. Number 16, inviting friends over. Number 17, stopping in to visit friends. Number 18, calling up somebody that you enjoy. 19, apologizing. Number 20, smiling at people. 21, calmly talking over problems with people that you live with. Number 22, giving compliments, back pats, praise, high fives. Number 23, teasing or bantering. Number 24, assuming people or making them laugh, so rather amusing. 25, playing with children. So if these are things you enjoy, put a check mark and then rate out of 10. The next section is activities that make you feel capable, loving, useful, or strong. The first one was all about social interactions. So I'm just going to read a few because there's a whole list of them. Those of you who have the book, you can absolutely do them on your own time. So, starting a challenging job of doing it well, helping someone, so counseling, advising, listening, repairing something, solving a problem, taking a look at, of course, my slides are just going all over the place here, exercising, thinking, going to a meeting, planning a budget, discussing political issues, correcting mistakes. So tick here along the lines of things that you enjoy here and rate them out of 10. Finally, our last one, and this is the longer list, but I'm not going to read all of them, is intrinsically pleasant activities. Laughing, relaxing, having a good meal, seeing beautiful scenery, wearing attractive clothes, wearing comfortable clothes. I like doing both in one. Beautiful clothes that are comfortable, that's what's important. Going to a concert, a ballet or an opera or a play, playing sports, taking trips or vacations, definitely. Going to a sports event, beautifying your home, reading sacred works, playing or singing music, boating, thinking about something good in the future, watching TV, taking a bike ride, being with animals, definitely, I like that. Taking a nap, that's also a favorite, especially when I need to get things done. Listening to nature sounds, getting or giving a back rub, that is so comforting. Attending a lecture, doing artwork, whether it's painting, drawing, or sculptures, watching a storm, of course, safe distance, having spare time, daydreaming, smelling a flower, talking about old times or special interests, traveling, going to auctions, garage sales. These are such nice, relaxing things. So once you've taken that tick mark and you put it along those, then you rate them out of 10, right? And see if you've done this in the last 30 days. And circle the events that you've probably enjoyed doing. And then compare yourselves, the first and the second part of noticing how many items you've enjoyed in the past that you currently are not doing very often, right? And then using the completed pleasant event schedule for ideas, make a list for the next 25 activities that you feel you'd enjoy doing the most. Then you want to make a plan to do more pleasant activities. Start with the simplest ones and the ones that you are most likely to enjoy. And when doing these activities, you will notice that when you actually schedule in, activities that are really helpful um, for yourself, that you notice there becomes a huge change within yourself because you're not feeling so stuck, right? So let's take a closer look at that. What happens to you when you actually, and again, my page, okay, we're good on the pages here. So as I was saying, circle the activities that you've been doing in the past that you haven't done as much now and compare yourself, how often have I done this and do I miss doing this? So then you want to schedule for the next while, like what we called them here is the pleasant event schedule. Plan activities that you're going to do for the next while to bring that pleasure and joy back into your life. I have recently noticed that I've been spending time with some really great friends and people that are just so pleasurable to be around, and you enjoy their company. They boost your, what's the word? Just that joy of being around like-minded and like-souled people. And it's amazing to be around people who have that beautiful energy. So it's really important to be aware, okay, so what am I going to do over the next while that can boost that spirituality, that connection of people, or just activities with myself that I enjoy doing that are healthy and that can help you in that growth. So it's really something quite powerful. So putting your mind and energy to that can go a long way. So our homework for the next while is that you're going to schedule experiencing pleasure to help you boost yourself a little bit more. All right. So some tips about pleasure. So you want to tune into the physical world. Pay less attention to your ongoing thoughts. Feel the wind or the soap suds as you wash the car, for example. See and hear things. So these are really great activities to do in terms of helping you just being more aware of the world around yourself and just increasing the pleasure that you are feeling, right? Because once you're stuck in that world of just doing the monotonous, just doing the boring, just doing what is expected of you to do, you will notice that it's really hard. It's really hard to find that joy and pleasure in slowing things down as well. So this really becomes quite helpful in taking a step back and being mindful and aware of just that self-care aspect, right? So before doing any of these events, set yourself up to actually mentally enjoy it. Identify 3 things you will enjoy better. So for example, I will enjoy the sunshine, the breeze, and talking with my brother if I'm going for a walk. I'm going to relax and imagine myself enjoying each aspect of the event. And you're going to repeat that statement to yourself and ask yourself, what will I do to make this activity more enjoyable for myself? So if you are concerned that you might not enjoy some activity that you'd like to try, break it up into steps. So think small so you can be satisfied in reaching that actual goal. For example, start by only cleaning the house for 10 minutes. Stop and reward yourself with a good job, pat on the back, treat, and then get back to it later. So check your schedule for that balance, as balance is really important. And then you can spread out the things that you need to do to make room for the things that you want to do. This is a really great tip to be able to do that for yourself. And the next part here, take a look at, is check in terms of how time is, because when it comes to time management, especially this time of year with schoolwork and so much to do, time is limited, right? And we want to use it wisely. So you don't need to do activities you don't like just because they're convenient. Finding ways, little things to make things worth living are really, really very helpful. So, what are some things that make life really worth living? So, for example, the smell of burning leaves in the fall, a hot shower when you're freezing, pizza delivered to your door, any of your favorite foods, but not junk food all the time, right? The one morning every 6 months that you and your toddler sleeps all the way till 7 o'clock, especially those who have little children, that's a tough one, right? So, the service department saying, no problem, that's on warranty. That feels great when you hear that, right? Room service. Oh, pets that sense when you were sad and come over to make you feel better. I know my cat does that. 2 weeks in the spring, during that time in the spring, when the drabbiest and grayest and brownest of shrubs are in that full technicolor. Oh, this is one of my favorite parts of the spring. Right now, it's pretty dreadful as I'm looking out the window. The snow is melting, everything looks brown. Those leaves that I didn't clean in the fall, they're all there. So, you know, those 2 weeks in the spring when everything is in that gorgeous technicolor. So, oh, when you get to the airport and you learn that your plane is at gate 1 rather than 322, yes, you don't have to run all the way down there. That's a really good one. So these are some really nice activities that are making, life rather worth living for. Heated pools. Oh, especially in the winter or when it's chilly. These are just fabulous, right? Another good one, zoo on a sunny day or a picnic, perhaps, right? Um, lying on the grass in the countryside and staring up at the brightest stars you've ever seen. These are really nice. Have you ever seen flying geese overhead? Um, on a perfect V. That's also something fascinating. Blood red autumn leaves, a cool breeze on a hot day. Oh, that's really worth living for. Your suitcase being the first one to appear on the airport baggage. That's one of my favorites as well. Another one, deciding you've had it with the world, then checking your calendar and realizing you have nothing booked for the next 5 nights. Just lay back, watch your Netflix, eat your favorite treats. Why not? That is something worth living for and enjoyable. All right, let's jump on to the next part. I hope you're enjoying this and feeling already within yourself such growth. When you take the time to do these activities for yourself, you notice how good that you feel when taking care of yourself like that. You know the feeling that you get when you help somebody? Imagine doing that to yourself. How great that feels. And this is exactly what we're doing here is scheduling pleasure for yourself, these activities that just release the endorphins and make you feel so good about yourself. All right, let's take a look finally next on how to prepare for setbacks. And these are natural, normal things that happen when you do come across challenges that come your way. So let's take a closer look at that here again. So you've now acquired a substantial number of skills to build that self-esteem. And regardless of how secure your self-esteem is, there is still the possibility that it can be blown away rather, or something could happen that makes you feel like an actual failure. So it's really important to develop the skill for writing out these failures and keeping that self-esteem strong and secure during these storms so that we know inevitably that they're all coming. So in some ways, this is activity that we're going to do next is a review. So let's first pre-assess, asking these questions. So what are the things at which people, include myself, fail at? I'll be honest, sometimes time management. That's a big one. What would be another one that you can think of? What does a failure, so to speak, mean for you? Perhaps it could mean not doing so well in a class. That's realistic, I would say, right? So something like that. What about number 2? What does failure actually mean to you? So that's something to reflect upon a little bit, right? Number 3, what has worked to help you cope with failure during, before, and after, right? And what do people fail? Here are some answers that adults have mentioned. So for example, jobs, marriage, parenting, that's a big one. School, definitely reaching our ideal weights, definitely, especially during the pandemic, that's been tough. Smoking cessation, keeping moral standards, making time for fun, which is what we just spoke about earlier, reaching our goals. Did you think of others? For example, what does failure mean in terms of nobody loves you, rejection, you're no good, not maintaining my self-esteem, I'm human. So, what has worked to help you cope with this failure in the past? And some people have mentioned through these studies that talking it over with somebody, giving oneself permission to fail. It's okay to fail, right? And that's a really important one. Forgiving yourself, realizing that it won't matter too much a few years from now. That mark that you get right now, it's not as high as you'd like it to be. It's not going to matter 5 years down the road. I constantly tell myself of that, reminded myself as a student, and that kind of helped get through the difficult studies, changing course, all of this, right? And so, are you getting the idea that people vary greatly in how they view failure in their abilities to cope with it? So, it's really important to understand that it happens. We are going to fail at these things, at these setbacks, but realistically thinking that this defines our worth, that can help change that idea, right? Especially when we take a look at that perfection, because we are not perfect beings. We are fallible. We are bound to make mistakes. And so, again, giving our permission to go from that failure to perfect, it's harsh. We got to be in the middle, right? Towards perfecting, meaning doing our best. So, let's take a look at handling these flops. How do we deal with it? So, this is a really great exercise. But let's first understand what that means. So, rather than using the label failure, the author likes to use the word flop to refer to unfortunate events or behaviors, mistakes, etc. So it sounds less serious and it's less permanent than failure. And it refers to the external part of us, not our core worth, right? So, one more concept of worth is reiterating before moving to the skill building activity is that we look at what research says. So, they show that pessimistic thinking styles held by men in their 20s predicted poor physical health when those men reached their 40s and 50s. So, when an unfortunate event occurred, these pessimistic men tended to fully fault themselves because they believed they would improve, and that belief that misfortune would spill over into the areas of their life. So, for example, after failing a math test, a pessimist would think, "It's me, I'm a failure. I always mess up math tests. I'm just unlucky when things really matter." What would an optimist think, on the other hand, right? Who fared better years, or and later on we see in their physical health, they might think and say, I wasn't up to par physically that day. Mentally, I wasn't at my full best. It was a one-time thing. This won't ruin my life. So you see the difference between the pessimist and the optimist in their line of thinking. So similar thinking styles, they tend to distinguish drug addicts who relapse after slipping from those who rebound from similar setbacks. This is an interesting point. So what do we get from this research? Some guidelines here to understand. Number one, admit mistakes. Don't deny responsibility, but focus on remedial action, what you need to do. Number two, reframe the event. So instead of condemning yourself, which erodes our self-esteem and saps motivation and energy, focus on externals. So, for example, instead of thinking, what's wrong with me? And we're imperfect, right? That's our answer. So focus on externals such as fatigue, incomplete preparation, too little experience, or difficult situations that occurred around you. That is very powerful. And instead of considering something as a total failure, remind yourself that there will probably be other opportunities. So after experiencing a flop, ask yourself these questions. Did certain things go well? What are the advantages of not getting what I wanted? What coping skills could I learn from this? What 3 signs of an impending crisis that I did not heed? If a similar event occurs again, what could I do to attend to such signs earlier? So these are things to think about. And now let's do this exercise. So these guidelines that we just take a look at can be really helpful. And let's put them into practice. And this is an exercise that is derived from the stress inoculation, which was developed by psychologist Donald Meichen, if I can pronounce this right, Meichenbaum. So he states that people can prepare for stress by practicing what they will think and do before, as we see here on our screen, what they can do before, during, and after encountering a stressful situation. So exposure to small and safe doses of imaginary stress can inoculate, hence the name of this exercise, right? It can help us with that small injection against disease. So here, the stressful event is the prospect of flopping. So for example, failing short of a goal, making a mistake, performing poorly, or forgetting to use your self-esteem skills when needed or when somebody's criticizing you. So step number one, I'm going to read off a list here, and I'd like you to think mentally or just put a check mark besides any of the statements that would have meaning for you. So for example, this is all part of your coping repertoire, okay? So let's take a closer look here. Number one, it will be fun. And there's a lot here. I'm just going to read a few. Those of you who have the book, absolutely spend some more time going through it. So this is for the before part. Before, it'll be fun to succeed. I'll approach this with curiosity, not with fear or self-doubt. I calmly examine the probable outcomes of my actions. I'll choose the course that seems the best. It could be fun to try and stretch the process. I'm not a deity. I'm human. It's okay to be imperfect. So these are really good ones to think about before the event takes place, right? Now let's take a look at during. This is difficult. Relax and focus on the task. Take it step by step. Everyone makes mistakes and has rough edges. Why should I assume I don't? Relax and enjoy the process, glitches, and all within it. I'll take it one step at a time. This informs me about my present limitations, and that's okay. Now, we're going to look at the after. I had a weakness. That was then, this is now. My judgment and behaviors were bad, but I am not bad. I am hopeful. The weak parts are rough edges. At the core, I am worthwhile. I love myself for this. I am still here for myself, to be a friend through this period. I have the courage to love myself when I'm imperfect. This is my foundation for growth. Well, there's a lot more here. I can shape my future. I have the right to correct my course. I'll be wiser next time. There's a bright side to this, even if I don't see it yet. I did it before. This isn't the end of me. The sun will come up tomorrow. What will I learn for the next time? Failure isn't final. Let's start again. Years from now, will anyone really care about this? So you see here, we're going to take, you look at before, during, and after a stressful event. So part two, okay, is taking a look at, with the statements that we're going to take a look at next, is that you look at, what most likely are you going to remember before, during, and after the times if your behavior falls short of your goal. So we want to choose 5 of these each areas, the before, the during, and after. And statements must not come, they don't necessarily need to come from here. So you can make, just like we have here in the book, break things down before, during, after. And during the next few days, you're going to write 5 of these statements, okay, to do with any flop potential that you come across, and spend 15 minutes mentally rehearsing what you think before, during, and after these activities, okay? And this is really great to work on that optimism again. And for those, for really amusing and profound treatment of the realistic optimism and dealing with failure, read Dr. Seuss's book, Oh, the Places You Will Go. I remember in my high school when we graduated, my high school principal wore the Dr. Seuss hat, and he read this book to us on our graduation day. It was quite optimistic. It's really great. All right. So this is how we set ourselves up for the setbacks that occur. And what we want to think about now is an overview of all of these activities that we have done in terms of the basics of our growth and just understanding, right? Growing is this ongoing process. It is never fully completed. It's really important to understand that about ourselves. The growth process is a way of loving, right? Because it is satisfying because it starts from the secure inner base of our worth and our love. Emotionally, this process says, I am glad inside and unafraid to be growing becoming even better. Ascent is difficult. Of course, we have to expect hard work on ourselves. And growing is not competitive or comparative. You can select your course and pace. Because what happens in growth is that, weight plans. So again, when we take a look at reviewing growth and summarizing, right? It's like we were saying, it's not competitive or comparative. And you can select your course and your pace. And like with weight plans or exercise or, looking at nutrition plans, whatever, it's always wise to pick a pace that can be maintained throughout your life in balance. Growing means elevating others along with yourself. Growing results from applying principles and pleasures that elevate you. Because growing is climbing the staircase, not arriving at your destination. You need not arrive to experience self-esteem. You need only to know in your heart that you're on track and you're moving ahead. So these are great skills in terms of how we want to review and keep going, and just to keep constantly check of yourself and applying these skills and not being so harsh on yourself, right? Because it's so easy to be harsh and on ourselves and just like dumping. You've heard that expression, dumping on ourselves. So it's really beneficial to be aware that, it's a process. We're not going to get there overnight, and to be kind to ourselves in this process and not be so rough and just mean to ourselves, just like as though you were being mean to somebody else. We tend to have that tendency to do it to ourselves. So to review, what are some of the skills that we have acquired? I didn't put this up on the screen. I was looking at it here. So these are the things that we just reviewed right now. And the acquired skills. Even though I am not perfect, nevertheless, this is an excellent skill to use in life just for the fun of it. We didn't take a look at that, but it's definitely in the book that you can look at. We looked at the loving, fearless searching, and honest moral inventory. And we took a look at pleasant activity scheduling. I hope all of you felt some really good vibes when thinking about scheduling activities for yourself over the next while, especially after exams, something to look forward to get you through the next 3 weeks. And flop inoculation, preparing yourself and dealing with setbacks, and just how to work and build on that. So to reinforce these important ideas and skills, okay, I want you to take a few moments to respond to these following questions that I'm going to put out for yourself. Is which one of these ideas had the most meaning to you? And those who are watching, I'd love to hear the feedback. And number 2, which skills do you most wish to return to and use again? So which one of these do you find yourself connecting with right now? And reflecting to yourself and asking this question of, what do I need right now? Are there skills in this area, in this section, that we'd like to spend more time with? So what amongst these can really help you boost more? And if so, take the time to do so. And we see here that sometimes I really enjoy the pleasant activities. I find that really boosts me for the rest of the week and helps me get going and doing more activities to motivate myself. So that's something that's really useful and helpful to do. And finally, in summary here, we see again what we've come across, the foundation of our self-esteem, which is what we have worked on for the last 3 parts of our series here, is to building that unconditional worth, factor 1, solid base. And the main part of that I find is looking at valuing your worth internally, and that your worth and your value is completely independent of external factors. This is a really powerful takeaway from that section. Love, I found that one of the big takeaways for that section is being able to heal that inner child of yours, that inner younger self of yours, through your own love and compassion as you as an adult now, as a young adult, going back in time and giving what that inner self needed and comforting and assuring them that everything will be okay. And in this last section of growth, I find that connecting yourself with pleasant activities is a really powerful way of strengthening your skills and just boosting that adrenaline and the happy hormones in your system by giving to yourself just like you would for other people, and preparing yourself for setbacks and flops with the flop inoculation by saying, even though, nevertheless, I'm still a person of value and worth no matter what happens. I am growing, I am learning. And so for those of you who are interested, again, as we wrap up this series, please do get a hold of this wonderful book that you can use hand in hand with this presentation series that we did on how to develop your self-esteem with Dr. Glenn Sheraldi. You can see how much I have used this book over and over again. It's an excellent book to help you build your self-esteem, grow, and give that loving compassion to yourself that you truly, truly deserve. And for those of you who are watching, I want you to thank yourself for spending time giving that to yourself right now, giving that time, giving that effort. And for those of you who are watching after, absolutely same thing. And if you have any questions, you can absolutely pop them over to me through YouTube or Facebook, or my email, berak.hussain@carleton.ca. And what are some things that you've taken away for yourself? Those of you who are watching, what are some things that really popped out for you? You can share them here. You can send them to me. And for those of you who are watching, stay tuned for our next series on stress management, which will be starting tomorrow, Friday at 2:30, same time and place. So we'll see you then. We're going to be doing a 3-part series on stress management, including a really nice mindfulness meditation. We'll be doing one on burnout and how to prepare for exams, which are coming up over the next 2 weeks. Thank you once again for joining in with this self-esteem, self-building, growth, development, love, whatever you want to call it, series. And I'd love to hear feedback from you. Take care and peace be with you.